Hello everyone, welcome back to week 5 of Learning C with the help of examples. In this week, we will be covering a little more examples on decision making, and we are also going to see some new libraries. For example, we are going to see math.h library. Then we are also going to see how to use switch statements, and finally we are also going to learn to use goto. Okay, so let us begin with the first task of this week. So the first task of this week is basically to find the roots of the quadratic equation, okay, with the help of math library. So okay, so now in this program we have to find out, the user will be entering the coefficients of a quadratic equation, right? And if you all know, the quadratic equation is usually in this format: a x square plus b x plus c is equal to 0. Okay, so where a, b and c are the coefficients, and we have to find out two roots of the quadratic equation, x1 and x2. Okay, so let us declare the variables required for our program. So definitely we need three variables a, b, c to store the coefficients. So let us take them as, let's say, we are dealing with only, let's suppose, no, let us take float. Okay, so we are dealing with decimal points also. Okay, so let's take float because the coefficients can be in a float also, right? So we are taking a, b and c. So these are the three coefficients, and at the end we should have two roots, that is, one is x1 and another is x2. Okay, so right now these are the variables that we need. Okay, so let's begin with the program. We have declared the variables. Now the next step is to tell the user what this program is going to be. So as you have seen in the other programs, we will just write the purpose of this program. Okay, so I have just added the purpose of the program. Now once I have the purpose, then my next task will be to get the coefficients a, b and c. Okay, so I will just do a scanf. So I will say enter value of a, right? So sorry, this should be, I forgot, this should be printf, and enter the values of a. This is just a hint for the user what they have to enter, and after that I will use a scanf to get the data from the user. And here, since the variable a is of type float, I should use percentage f over here, then ampersand sign a. Okay, so this finishes with the input for a. Similarly, I have to take input for other two variables b and c. So I will just copy them and paste it two more times and just replace the values with b and c. Okay, so now after this program runs, it will display quadratic roots finder. Then it will take three inputs, right? After we have the input, now if you look at the task, I have given you the format in which a quadratic equation is, and also what is the formula to for finding out the roots. Okay, so if you look at this, this particular term, the b square minus 4ac, this is called the discriminant. Okay, so let us find out what is the discriminant, because based on that we can decide a few things. Okay, so if the discriminant is, let's suppose, let's say if it is 0. Okay, if the discriminant is 0, then you can see that this entire thing becomes 0, so you have two roots that are equal. Okay, so and if the discriminant is negative, your roots will be imaginary, and if your discriminant is positive, then your roots are real and different. Okay, so basically you have three such conditions, and if I just go down, I will show you all the different conditions. You can see how the program is expected. So you are entering the coefficients a, b and c, and as soon as you enter, it will tell you whether what is the status of the roots. Okay, so in this case, the roots are real and equal, and the roots are x1 equal to x2 equal to -2, right? In the second case, you can see if some different values are there, it will show you what is the roots, and you can also display the roots are real but different. Okay, and in the third case, in this case, the roots are imaginary, and you have to find out what is the value of this imaginary roots. Okay, let's go deal it one by one. Okay, so let's first find out what is the discriminant. Okay, so to find out discriminant, we have to use the formula, that is b square minus 4ac. This is the formula for discriminant, right? So we have to store it somewhere, right? So we will take another variable, let's say d for discriminant, right? And here we will store the value of the discriminant. Discriminant is actually b into b minus 4 into a into c. Okay, and if I just check what is the value of d. Okay, so I will start by, if my value is, let's say, d equal to 0. Okay, so if the discriminant is equal to 0, then the roots are printf, the roots are equal, right? So I've just printed the roots are equal, but I have not yet calculated what are the roots. Okay, so that we will do in a little while, right? Then in the next case, I will do else if. So if the discriminant is, if d is greater than 0. Okay, so that means it is not 0, and it is not less than 0, it is greater than 0. In that case, I can write that the roots are real and different. Okay, the roots are real and different, and in the final case, if the value is not equal to 0 and it is not greater than 0, then that means it is less than 0, and whenever it is less than 0, whenever discriminant is less than 0, the roots are imaginary, right? So roots are imaginary. Okay, so I have found out what will be the condition, but I have not yet calculated what are the roots. Okay, just let us check till now if we are getting the output. Okay, so let's take the value of 1, 4 and 4. You will see the roots are equal. Okay, so that means your discriminant is equal to 0. Okay, and you can check for the other values. Now once that is done, let's find out what is the value of x1 and x2. Okay, now to find out the value of x1 in this, if you're inside this condition, okay, so that means your d value is equal to 0. So since your d is 0, that means this part is 0, this entire term will become 0. Okay, that means your plus minus square root of b square minus 4ac, this entire terms becomes 0. So the only thing left is minus b by 2a. Okay, so your formula is x1 is equal to x2 is equal to minus b divided by 2a. Okay, so it is minus b divided by inside brackets 2 into a. Now these brackets are very important. Okay, so once you have this, the next step is simply to print the roots. Okay, so the roots are, so x1 is equal to x2 is equal to, now it is, I can simply say, I can just print x1. Okay, because x1 and x2 both are same. So you can see I have printed the value of the roots, okay, when they are equal. Now if I just run this, and if I just enter the values 1, 4 and 4, you can see I get the roots. Okay, the roots are equal, x1 equal to x2 equal to minus 2.0. Perfect. Okay, so that is the first part. Now the second part is when the roots are real and different. Okay, so when the roots are real and different, I have to implement this entire formula. Right, now to implement this entire formula, what you have to do is you have to write this entire formula down two times, one for x1 and another for x2. When it is x1, you will use the plus sign, and when it is x2, you will use the negative sign over here. Okay, so let us begin. So x1 is equal to, so it starts with minus b, okay, plus, now we need to find the square root. Okay, so as such in C there is no square root, so this is where we are going to use uh, the library function called math.h. Okay, so we are going to include it. Now before we go ahead and use this library, I would like to show you the different functions that are available in this library. Let's start with that. So these are just the list of all the library functions that are there in math.h. Okay, now I'm just going to show you the list. Okay, so basically all these functions that you see in this, they all accept one or two parameters as the input, and it will return some value as the output. Okay, and very important thing to note is it will take double as the input, and it will return double as the output. Okay, so if let's suppose, then you may ask, then how will float work, or how will the int value work in this case where the function accepts only double. Okay, so that will be handled automatically by the compiler itself. The casting that has to be done, okay, the conversion of integer to the double before sending it to this function will be handled by the compiler, so you need not worry about that. So the only thing you need to know is this is going to take double as the input and return double as the output, but at your end it may be converted to the required data type that you have mentioned in your program. Okay, so let us begin. So there are all different sine and all the trigonometric functions. So there is a sine, a cos, a tan, then there is normal cos, hyperbolic cos, sine, sine hyperbolic, and you can find the exponential power of numbers. Then you can find log to the natural base and log to the base 10. Then you can also find mod. Then you can use power function to find out the value of x raised to y, something like that. Okay, and you can also find out square root from here, right? Then you can round off the values with the help of ceil and floor. okay, and you can also use fabs and f mode. Okay, so out of these all these functions that are available, we are going to use a few of them in this particular week's tasks, right? And in out of these all these functions, particularly we are going to use this square root function, because if you look at our quadratic equation, the solution of the quadratic equation, it is square root of b square minus 4ac, right? So that square root we have to find out with the help of this particular command. Okay, so let us begin. So basically the way you use it, when whichever function you want to use, you have to first include the math library at the top, and after that wherever you want to use it, you just start by writing square root sqrt and give the number for which you want to find the discriminant. Okay, so if you remember, we have to find out square root of this, and this we have already calculated as the discriminant. Okay, so basically we have to find out square root of d. Okay, so once this is done, we have to divide this whole thing, right? So for that I will add a bracket over here and then divide the whole thing with 2 into a, right? So this finishes with x1. I will copy the same equation again and paste it, replace this by x2 and this sign by negative sign. Okay, so that is the solution to our equation which in which the roots are real and different. Okay, so now once we have calculated it, the rest of the things are very simple. We will just print out the roots. So x1 is equal to x1, and then I will copy this again, and x2 is equal to x2. Okay, so this finishes with our second case. Okay, so let's try it out. So for the second case, I can take the value 1, minus 5 and minus 14. Let's try that. So 1, minus 5 and minus 14, and you can see we get two real roots, 7 and minus 2. Perfect. Okay, so now the last case is when we have a imaginary roots. Okay, so let us take the last case. In the last case, this particular value b square minus 4ac is negative. Okay, so basically this value is negative, right? So since this value is negative, I cannot solve the square root directly, right? So to solve that, I can do x is equal to minus b, so plus minus. So since it is a negative value, I can shift this as square root of minus 1 into square root of b square minus 4ac, right, divide by 2a, right? And we all know what is this value, b square square root of minus 1. This is nothing but I. Okay, so this is minus b plus minus I, and this is b square minus 4ac is our discriminant, that means this is d, right, and divide by 2a, right? So since we know we can separate this out to both of them, so I can simply write it as minus b by 2a plus minus I square root of d by 2a, right? So this is the formula for finding out the roots when the roots are imaginary. Okay, so let us code this. Okay. Now to code this, we will have to use this formula, right? So x1 will be with the positive sign and x2 will be with the negative sign. Let's begin, right? So let us find the value of x1 first. X1 is equal to, so the formula is uh, now because we need to have two different values to be stored, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of calculating the value of x1 and x2, what I am going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I will show you how. Okay, so printf, so x1 is equal to, so basically it will be something like this. Okay, so let's say p plus iq, right? So it will be something like this, right? So there will be a real part and there will be a imaginary part. Okay, so the formulas for these two we have already found out. So this is minus b by 2a and this is square root of d by 2a. Okay, so we just have to find out these values and insert it over here, right? And let the I be there as it is, right? Now to do that, what we can do is we can simply write a percentage f over here, because this place is going to be replaced, and then a percentage f over here. Okay, and space and I. Okay, so the values will be replaced over here and over here, right? And after this I'm going to find out the values. Now this is where I'm going to cheat. I'm not going to store these values in any variable. I'm going to directly calculate and put it inside the printf. Okay, so the formula is minus b divided by, inside brackets it is 2 into a, that will be this percentage f, then comma, then I need to have sqrt, square root of d, right? Now because d is negative, I have to put a minus sign over here. So what happens is the value of negative number into the minus sign that is outside will make this positive, right? So this will make it positive d, right? And then I have to divide by 2 into a, right? So this will give me my first value, right? And the second value I can find out, x2, I am simply going to write a negative sign, and the remaining formula and everything remains the same, right? Okay, now there is this is not 100% correct. I will show you the problem, right? So before going ahead, I will just put a backslash n over here so that it looks better when we see the output. Okay, so let us run. Now before running it, let us find what input we can put. Now for imaginary we can put 2 3 4, right? So anything we can try. So let's try 2 3 4, 2 3 and 4. You can see the value you're getting is imaginary number, two roots, x1 and x2, and you're getting a perfect result, right? So you can check that with the result that we have got over here. Now here we have used precision, that's why it is not exactly the same, so we can also do that. Now to do that, what we can do is we can simply add precision over here, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, so that only two decimal places are shown, right? So we will run this again, 2, 3 and 4, you can see you get the same result. Okay, so now here there is a slight problem, because this sign, the plus sign and the negative sign, these signs are put are inserted by us, right? So what if the value of this, that means square root of minus d uh, divided by 2a itself is negative, right? So that will create a problem, right? Why? Because then this will show, the first line will show minus 0.75 plus and then minus 1.20, and in the second line it will show minus 0.75 minus into minus 1.20. Okay, so technically it is not wrong, because that is just a sign of the number, right? But what we can do is, in this case, I will show you a trick that we can use. So we can omit this sign completely. Okay, so now if I run it, so sorry, 2, 3 and 4, you can see we are getting the result, but there is no sign over here, right? So now this sign I can introduce in a different way. Okay, so that way is simple. In this point to f, okay, I can just add a positive sign over here. Okay, now what this positive sign means is, whenever you want to forcefully show the sign, okay, now by default whenever you run your program, only negative numbers are shown with a minus sign in front of it, right? But if you want both the positive and the negative numbers to show the symbols in front of them, you just add the plus sign in the float value. Okay, so now if I run this 2, 3 and 4, you can see I am getting the perfect result. Okay, now the advantage of this is, even if the value of 1.20, okay, so the second part is negative, this sign is coming automatically, so you are not putting it, so the result will not be incorrect. Okay, so I hope you have understood how I have tackled with the various cases of how finding out the roots of the quadratic equation. Similarly, there are multiple uses of the math library. We will be seeing a couple of more in some other tasks. So see you in the next task, where we will discuss a little more detail about switch statements.